We are unmuted.
Oh, we got 5 viewers too. What is connecting to chat? Why is it? Oh, is that weird?
Yeah.
I can hear them.
Where does it say connecting to chat?
On the Streamlabs thing, it says connecting to chat. Because, well, you have the chat over there, and then you see it says connecting to chat on Streamlabs. So I don't know what's over there. Anyways, welcome everybody. We're going to be doing a build a PC with PC Gamers today. We have Paige here, and I am Devin. I'm the owner of PC Gamers, and this is my manager. So we're going to be building a more budget kind of build right now. And so we're going to be using an Asus Micro ATX board, and that's we have two different cameras, so it's a little confusing.
There you go.
I'm terrible at this. All
You
right.
are.
So this is far away. This is how it is up close. So this is a little bit more premium than some of the motherboards that are going to be found in like pre-built computers from like other companies. So this one you have two PCIe slots for your graphics cards if you want to have two graphics cards, or you can have expansion cards. And we also have 4 RAM slots, so you can have up to 64 gigs of RAM in this computer right here.
We're just going to be cutting 16 gigs in today. There. Oh, I'm bad at this too.
Yeah, see?
Practice.
See, it's better just go.
Yeah, okay. Just Corsair, Vengeance, 2 8 gigs. Anything else to say about that?
No. So the memory that we're going to be using is 3000 megahertz. So it's going to have a faster speed for the memory. The cast latency is on this one is going to be cast level 15, which is a good performing chip for that speed. So like if you put chat up on
I just put it on here. I can see it here.
Oh, okay.
Big Stew Epic, yeah.
So with the RAM, so we're going to be loading up some of the parts into the motherboard right now before we place it into the case, so that way we can get it all situated and squared away. So the RAM we're going to be using is the Corsair Vengeance LPX. And so in these newer motherboards, especially with DDR4, they will, on the 4 RAM slots, you're going to use the gray, which is going to be 2 and 4 on the slots. And if you guys can let me know if my audio is good, if you guys can hear me as well, if I need to speak up. So you want to make sure you lock it in on the back side, and then lock it in where the clip is, and that way it connects fully. You'll see with the
That sounds good.
on the RAM, it's going to have this little notch here. This is so that you install it correctly, because DDR1, DDR2, 3, and now 4 all have the slot in a different location. The reason for that is so that you don't use the wrong memory on newer motherboards. And then so you also don't put it in the incorrect way.
I know I shared to a couple of the homeschooling groups, or maybe kids watching, to simplify it a little bit. RAM is like your short-term memory. So like if you're in school and you have all that math knowledge in your head, but you're not using it all the time, and then you go to math class, you're pulling from RAM when you're currently using that information. That's kind of how I thought about it, right? You know?
So you're loading just that information into there while you're using it, and then once you stop using it, then it kind of goes away. So you don't really remember it until you need to use it again. So that's when you're going to access that long-term memory, which is going to be your solid-state drive. And this is an Intel 660p 512 gigabyte M.2, and this is an NVMe drive. So with NVMe, it's going to...
we just had a question. Yeah, it said, does it matter which slots the RAM goes in?
So yes, with the RAM, you're going to, if you only have 2 sticks of RAM, you're going to be putting it in the slot 2 and slot 4, which is going to be... So
from left to right, just like reading a book.
So it's going to be in the gray slots, and a lot of times on the motherboard, with this one, so on the motherboard itself, it will actually show you which slots want the RAM to be installed first, and they're going to show you that with a little star. It's going to be super hard to see. but it lists the name of the slot, and then it's going to have a star next to it, and that's going to be the ones that you use first. So this one is labeled dim underscore A2 with a star next to it, and dim underscore B2 with the star next to it. And that's going to be your first slots that you install your dual channel memory into.
He also asked, can you increase the RAM frequency in BIOS?
Yes, you can. So when it stock, it's going to show the default speed, which is going to be most likely 2133 or 2400 depending on the motherboard chipset. This RAM is 3000, so we're going to be enabling XMP or DOCP, which is going to be used to overclock the memory to its default spec. And that's what's going to increase the frequency. You can increase it more after that, which is considered more overclocking, and that's not usually suggested unless you really know what you're doing with the computer, because it can create instability with the system. Yeah, that's why I wouldn't just have chat
That's all right.
on that one.
I mean, okay, yeah, I'll do that.
Or if you want to put the phone over here.
That was the last question.
Oh, okay. All right, so now that we have the RAM installed, and if you wanted to add more RAM, the best thing to do is to get the same type of memory. So you would go with Corsair 3000 megahertz again, and you would put it in the black slots, and that's how you would add more memory to the system. Where's my little mini screw go? There it is. Okay. So now we have, we're going to be installing the SSD, which is going to be this little tiny one here. This is a M.2 drive, and it connects directly to the CPU or to the chipset. So with this motherboard, it's going to be connecting directly to the CPU. And now, one of the things that I see a lot of times when customers come in, if they've installed it, is there's a little standoff screw, which is super tiny. This needs to be used so that you're not directly mounting it at a sloping angle to the motherboard. And so with the standoff, it keeps it raised up so it gets airflow, and it keeps the PCB, which is what the chips are on, it keeps it flat so that you're not bending it.
A lot of motherboards now also have like a hidden spot for that. They'll have one open and then one that's like under another more aesthetic piece, so you can just kind of hide it.
Yeah, so like they'll be underneath a heatsink because these drives do get really hot, but you don't want to cool them too much because it will cause performance losses with it. So they're designed to run hot, but they want to be in an optimal kind of temperature range. So now with it locked in with this little screw, now we have it mounted, and this is what the right over here. So this is what the operating system is going to be installed on. The speed of these drives when they are NVMe is going to be anywhere from 1500 megabits per second to about 3400 for a Gen 3. With newer AM4 boards, they have Gen 4, and that can go up to 5000 or more megabytes per second. So compared to like a normal 2.5-inch SSD, those ones are about 500 to 550. So you get much faster performance on it. So like Windows can load in 6 seconds or 6 to 12 seconds or so. You get just faster speed. When you're doing a lot of video editing or large file sizes, you'll get much faster transfer speeds out of it as well. So the next thing that we're going to be installing in this board before we place it into the case is going to be the CPU. And so the CPU that we're using for this build is going to be a Ryzen 5 3600, which is a 6-core 12-thread. Now when installing the CPU, you want to lift up the lever, which is to lock in the CPU. So we have it, this lever right here, you'll see this metal piece right here, and then you're gonna lift it up, and that makes it so you can socket it in. And there is a arrow. It's hard to see.
Gotta put your hand behind it.
What?
You really? That's okay.
Okay, so there's an arrow on. There's like you'll see a notch, and there's an arrow right over here, and so that's gonna line up to the motherboard to make sure that you're installing it the right way. If you install it the incorrect way, you can bend your pins on it and damage the CPU, and that is definitely not ideal.
So the CPU is like the brain of the computer. It does all your logical and is that arithmetic?
Yeah,
It does all those tasks.
Handles the ones and zeros.
Yeah, makes all the calculations to make everything work.
So we're going to be, instead of using the stock CPU cooler, which is a much smaller. So the stock CPU cooler is about this big and much smaller. It'll get the job done, but one of the things that we wanted to include with this is the Wrath Prism, which is a more advanced stock cooler. Usually comes in the higher end CPUs. And so this one has copper heatsink on it, base plate, with copper pipes that transfer the heat up to the fan and the heatsink fins to dissipate the heat faster.
He's asking, do you know what the Intel equivalent is to the Ryzen CPU we're using?
Generally with the Ryzen 5, you're going to be looking at like the Intel i5. So with Intels, they're going to have a faster clock speed and less cores. So like the Ryzen 5 or the Intel i5 9600 is going to be I think a 6-core 6-thread CPU. And so with that it'll be around the 4 gigahertz to 5 gigahertz range. Usually it's a little bit more ideal for like sound production, like if you're making your own music or if you're doing certain gaming likes faster frequencies, whereas an AMD you're going to get more threads, so you can do better multitasking. Also, AMD is going to be much cheaper than the Intel equivalent because Intel has been kind of like the king of the market for a long time, so they price their things. The way they were pricing them was kind of a little bit gougy, but now with the with AMD coming up with the Ryzen first gen, second gen, now third gen, they're feeling the heat a little bit more. So we're gonna be. Why are you giving me this?
That's the one that was here.
Oh, so we're gonna be using Thermal Grizzly, which is one of the best thermal greases on the market, and so this one gives you much better cooling, kind of like heat transfer from the CPU chip to the heatsink.
This is a spot in building where a lot of people tend to go overboard when they don't need to.
Yeah.
So you only need just very little.
So one of the things that I have on my Gamers Nexus build mat that I'm using, it actually does have.
Oh my goodness, does it? I didn't notice that. That's so cute.
So it actually has ideals of how to apply your thermal paste. So it's going to be right over here. So you have the Threadripper doing a big X with a bunch of dots around it. The Ryzen.
It's just a straight line, yeah.
Line down the middle or an X. I usually do an X. Skylake, which is going to be Intel, and Coffee Lake, which is Intel. You can do a line or a line and dots. And so these are what Gamers Nexus, which is a YouTuber, has found is the best to do. Generally, I do an X, and I would just start at one end.
I put a link in our chat for a GoFundMe that we put up because for the first time in how many years has PC Gamers been open?
We've been open. I've owned the store for 12 years, but the store has been on island for 17 years.
But because of the whole COVID-19 situation, this is the first time that we've been forced to close doors here, so that we don't spread. We can help stop the spread of COVID-19. So we are closed to public gaming, but we're still open for builds and repairs. So if that's anything you guys need for working at home or just gaming at home while you're stuck at home during this quarantine, definitely send us a message. We'd be happy to help.
So the way that this locks in is going to be, it's going to lock onto the factory brackets that AMD has on their motherboard. And then, so we want to make sure it locks in on one side. Come on. This is especially hard sometimes.
I know the first time I built a computer, I was really nervous because I thought I was gonna snap it or something because it really feels snug.
All right, so now we have it locked into place, and this puts the pressure onto it, so it spreads the thermal paste, fills in any gaps that are going to be between the ICH, I think it's ICH or ICS, which is the top of the CPU, and the cold plate or the copper plate on the heatsink. And then we want to plug in the fan to the fan header. Yes. Talking a lot. It's hard for me.
That's what I was supposed to be here for, but you're doing a great job.
See, I was doing that thing in Maui that helped me out.
Yeah, good.
So yeah. Do we have any other questions? Oh. So delidding a CPU is really, mainly for Intel, because what they use between the ICH, I forgot what it's called. I think it's ICH. No. Anyways, between it's the thing that holds the CPU basically. Using like Thermal Grizzly, I think it's a Conductonaut, is really good to use for like Intel CPUs because you can get a much higher overclock out of it. So when you're doing extreme overclocking, like water cooling, like custom water cooling, or liquid nitrogen, or dry ice, some of the stuff that like Gamers Nexus or Jay's 2 Cents use, then you're going to need to delid your CPU, and that's going to be beneficial. But if you're just doing, your stock cooler or an advanced cooler, you don't need to delid it because it does avoid the warranty as well. And if you do it wrong, you kind of just wasted $500 or more on your CPU. So it's not really suggested in my mind. But if you got the money to burn, I mean, more power to you, basically. So the other thing with what other do we have any questions? I think we went over the dot or the X kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So that really just depends on what you're going to be doing. Definitely don't use the entire tube of thermal paste. You don't need to be like the Verge on this, no reason to. And if the CPU cooler already has thermal paste on it, you can use just that thermal paste, or if you do have Thermal Grizzly, which is a better thermal paste, then you can remove the stock thermal paste that's on the cooler that you're using, and then just use the Thermal Grizzly. Alright, so I think we're ready to mount it into the case. What?
No, I was just going to help you make space.
One of the things you always want to make sure that you load in first into the case is your I/O shield. And so what this does is it protects the backside of like your USB ports and any other ports that are on the back. And so you want to make sure that that is loaded in first, because if you don't, you have to take everything out again to load it back in, and that just takes more time. So not really suggested. Always load that in. It's not a bracket, it's an I/O shield. This guy probably watched The Verge. Don't listen to The Verge ever. That guy was special. But if you did watch Bitwit's video on it, Bitwit's video was delicious. Super good video.
Oh, please don't say that.
What? It's delicious?
Oh, yeah.
I can't say delicious?
No.
Oh, but it was so nice.
Oh, I think I fixed it maybe. Oh shoot.
Alright, so the case that we're going to be using is a super tiny micro ATX case, and this is a Silverstone mesh case. The reason I'm using this is it's more of a budget build, but it does have really good air intake compared to some of the cases that you'll see, like when you go Best Buy. This one has mesh front, so you're going to get much cooler air intake than having like a straight plastic cover or a metal cover. So you're going to get better cooling to the system, which is more ideal than having just something that looks pretty. Because you can always pretty up something. So we're going to be adding like RGB fans to this. Adding RGB adds more FPS to your computer, kind of like adding stickers to a Honda.
So you asked if smaller cases are recommended. I think it's really personal preference.
It is personal preference. So like if you're going to be using it in your like media center for your next to your TV in your living room, or if you're traveling with it. So like the Leon Lee TU150 is a super nice case, and I've built in it probably about 6 times or so. That one has a handle that pops up, and you can just easily take it to your friend's house if you want, or if you're taking it to work or you're taking it somewhere else, then it's really nice. We do also have this, one of the computer that we're streaming on right now is this NZXT case, which we have etched with This Is the Way, and we put Baby Yoda on it. And so this is etched into the glass, so it's permanent. But this is a mini ITX case, so it holds...
very, very small.
Yeah, super small footprint. Looks like the brand new Xbox that's going to be coming out, but it's got a lot of power in it. This computer has an RTX 2070 Super, and it's got 16 gigs of RAM, 2 SSDs in it, and then it's got an i5 CPU. It's also got a water cooler built in, and then the the SFX power supply.
So if you're interested in that, let us know. We do have financing options available if you need to do like monthly payments. It's a great option.
Okay. So the I/O plate, and if I'm rambling too much, you can always just tell me I'm rambling.
Tell him he's rambling.
So with the I/O plate, you want to make sure that you're installing it the correct way as well. So when you look at the motherboard, you'll see here the way where the holes need to be. So if you ever played with blocks, then you kind of know how this works. So this is going to be installed this way. Whereas if we tried to do it upside down, then it's not going to work and we're going to have a bad time. So we want to make sure that we're installing it the correct way. So when it comes in to mounting this, you want to make sure that you're pressing firmly into it to lock it into place and that it's even the entire way.
Here, come over this way. There you go.
So now we have it mounted, locked in correctly, and that'll make it so that the motherboard lines up properly as well.
This is another really easy mistake to make because on the back of this plate are these little prongs. So when you put the motherboard in, if those aren't aligned correctly, it can really affect what you're able to do.
That's why one of the things that I like to do is, I'm going to turn this.
That's good.
Tilt it down. So one of the things that I like to do is, with these, is kind of bend them up a little bit so that the motherboard lines in properly. So now that we have it, we're going to mount the motherboard. So I already have all the screws in place that it needs to be. Oh, it's annoying. So we have all the standoffs in place already on the case. A lot of the cases already come with standoffs pre-installed. This one, we needed to add 2 more on the end because not all motherboards are going to use the same standoffs. Majority of them will. There is a standard to it, but then you want to make sure that you're using those because if your motherboard is touching directly to the case, then you can ground out, you can short things out. So that's not, you're going to have a bad time if that happens, and you're going to end up destroying your toy. Do you have more questions?
Not yet.
Do we have a lot of people, or is it just broken?
Our magnetic screwdriver is okay to use.
So the
yes.
screwdriver that I'm using is a Be Quiet screwdriver. This one comes with a lot of the Be Quiet, like Dark Rock 4 Pro CPU coolers, and it does have a magnetic tip on it, so it is perfectly fine to use that. Generally, you don't want to use a magnet near mechanical hard drives because they do have magnets inside of them. So if you're adding more magnets to it, then you can wipe the data that's on it. Generally, with how magnetized these ones are, they're not going to damage components by being next to them.
This other guy's looking forward to the hookup tutorial of the power reset, on the bottom of the motherboard, those real tiny ones.
Oh, okay.
Those are, that's a fun part of the build.
I do get a lot of people that do come in and they're just like, oh, it doesn't turn on, and I'm like, well, you didn't hook up your front panel connectors to the right thing, and either they just didn't know where it went, and so that's where reading the manual is always, if it's your first time, reading the manual is super important because you're going to find out everything you need to in that. The next best thing to do is to look at reviews or YouTube videos from your favorite people that build computers.
Mini flashlight and maybe even a magnifying glass are super helpful too for those tiny words.
I definitely do use a very bright flashlight when I'm plugging in things, because having the best lighting is not always accessible. We do have a super bright LED flashlight that's above us, but shadows are kind of not fun.
How tight do you screw the head into the hole?
You definitely want to do it hand tight. If you over tighten it, you can crack the board, or you can cause a short issue where there's solder points near it. So you don't want to use a drill and ratchet it down all the way. Pretty much just hand tighten. Once you feel resistance, then you want to stop. Come in.
I got the chat up right finally. How are you guys all dealing with the stay-at-home orders, those of you that are here in Hawaii? Are you finding it difficult, or are you getting things done? I think it's a little of both. I'm getting more. I'm definitely at work more now that we're actually closed, getting more done here. But it's with kids. I've got 2 kids who are out of school until the end of April, and that's definitely wasn't intending to homeschool this year. But it's a good eye opener and a good refresher.
All right, so now that we have the motherboard installed,
Tycho!
Now we're actually going to install the fans into the case, because we're going to start running out of space soon. So with the front panel, almost all front panels on every case you can just pull from the bottom and it'll snap out. So this is really good because then you're able to clean the front panel, any dust that's on there, and remove it. So it's a good thing that we did not tie everything down already, because if we did, it would have made it so that removing the front panel would have been an extra hard challenge to do. So we're going to be using deep cool addressable RGB fans for this, and so we have stickers as well that we put on all of our computer builds, and so we're going to be branding it, of course, as well.
I just shared our link, our GoFundMe link again for those of you just joining. If you're, enjoying the content or just want to help out a local business who's been closed down for the time being because of this pandemic, we would definitely really appreciate that. Tycho, we miss you. That Tycho guy down there is one of our regular customers. He's pretty awesome at OSU. Should check him out.
I'm kind of an OCD person when it comes to wiring my computer, so sometimes I might not talk that much, but this is where making sure that the cables kind of go in the right places to get optimal look on it. And so sometimes you can't really see that too well.
I think it's really helpful, though, to be more organized than not when it comes to wiring, because if anything ever goes wrong, if you need to replace anything, if something's not working, it is extremely difficult to try to figure out what wire's in the wrong spot. If you need a specific wire, and people bring in cases that are just, there's no organization, but a lot of these cases have really good opportunities to do some wire organization. Like on this particular case, they've got a lot of, what do you call these things?
Channels tie downs for like zip ties. You definitely don't want to use, what is it? Where's the guy? What's his name? Grang? The guy that was quoting the Verge stuff. Yeah, we're not using tweezers or twisty ties.
Tweezers?
You didn't watch that video?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, he shows a zip tie and he's like, we're gonna have tweezers here. He's like, okay.
Oh, okay.
All right, so when it comes to doing the fans, so you'll see I just have the wires in place right now, but they're not screwed in at all yet, so they can still move. So the benefit of your front fans is you're gonna have your top fan is gonna be for mainly cooling, like your RAM, heading to your CPU, cooling off your power delivery area as well. And then your bottom fan is gonna be for bringing in cold air to your GPU, which is super important. So I'm going to be raising the fans up to kind of be as high as they can go for the top fan.
And it does matter what way you put your fans in, whether it be intake or exhaust. Something I didn't know that Devin showed me is there on each fan is these little arrows. Let me see if I can zoom into it. It's probably going to be bad lighting. There's little arrows on the side that point to which way the airflow is going. So if you're ever confused about which way to place your fan to get it to be intake or exhaust, that's a little quick cheat to check that out.
And I'm using a drill for the fans because my arms don't like me, and when I use a hand screwdriver, it causes me to have super awesome pain in my arms. So that's where it's really good if you're young to continue working out, because gaming and like if you're planning to be an esports player or something like that, you want to make sure you're maintaining physical health as well, with good diet and good exercise to make sure that you're able to maintain your level of play. What?
No need, be modest.
Just flex those guns. I don't have guns. I'm so fat now. I'm like emotional eating because of this.
I think the takeaway is, though, that your health does matter, even if you're just social gaming or especially esports. Getting into the world of esports, it's not just the gamers, but the gamers have some pretty intense stamina, and those micro movements with your arms, like as in Devin's case, it affects you if they're not up to par. Can I use a hand screwdriver if I don't have a power drill?
Yes, you can use a hand screwdriver.
Do fans need to be on extra tight?
So I'm not screwing them on extra tight. I'm just, because when I use a hand screwdriver, it causes pain on my forearm. So that's the reason I don't do that, because of the repeated movement. And since I do have pre-existing condition there, I don't want to do a hand screwdriver. So I use a drill on, I generally have it, it's supposed to be on the 1 setting instead of so I'll put it on like 1 to 3, and this is for the torque, so that it'll stop when it goes too strong. And I'm not over tightening it, I'm just screwing it in really slowly. So once it gets to the place screwed in all the way, then that's where I stop. So kind of gauging it, how it kind of goes, and you would figure it out after a few times. Because the best way to learn for doing anything is to really just do it. Because when you make mistakes is where you learn from it, and when you limit yourself from making a mistake is when you don't learn about anything. So that's always a good way to trial and error. is super important. So now we have the front fans installed, and you'll see here we have those all set up, and the wires are tucked to go behind the case, and so that we can wire them up at a later time. I'm going to install the back fan now, which will be used for exhaust. Do I make any cringy faces?
There's it's entertaining.
I make entertaining faces.
So those of you that are watching now, we've got 11 people watching. Have you ever built your own computer, or are you looking to maybe build a computer? Because no, it's scary. It is pretty intimidating. It is. I agree there. And just watching somebody can be confusing too, because there's so much going on. You once scolded this person on your cable management. I 100% believe that.
What?
This person says you scolded them on their cable management.
Oh, I like to tell. I'm kind of like those restaurants that insult you when you come and order things. So
It's Ryan.
who's Ryan?
Well, whoever you scolded on their cable management. Ryan. What's your gamer tag?
You probably deserved it.
Your former employee, Ryan.
Is that concrete block?
What?
C block, yeah, concrete block. Oh, he got scolded for other things. How you doing, man? Haven't seen you in forever. I think you moved to the mainland. Okay, so we got the back fan installed now. So when we turn this beauty on, it'll be nice and lit up. And if you're going to be doing like RGB stuff, a white case is always going to be better for RGB because it doesn't really diffuse the light. Kind of bounces off more of it. You get a much better look out of it.
I think white cases are just better all around. They're cleaner. They look nicer.
They're cleaner to start with, but then once you let like some dirty hand guy use it, then it's not clean anymore.
Nah, these guys aren't dirty hand guys. They take great care of their PCs.
So this case does still have room for adding 2 more fans, and the fans up on top, if you can't really use it for a radiator, for like a water cooler, just because there's not enough clearance on it. But you can use it for like an intake or exhaust fans for your air intake, and that'll work fine. But we're not currently using that. So now we have that stuff. What do we have? We have graphics right now.
Yeah.
All right, so now we have the front panel connectors, which are going to be. So we have USB 3.0, which plugs into a big 20-pin, I think, connector. We have the front audio, which is HD audio, and then we have these little tiny things that are going to be for your front panel. So you're going to have your hard drive light, power switch, and your power LED. And so these are what plug into the little pins on the motherboard that can be sometimes challenging. So you always want to look at where like the most annoying one goes, which is going to be your USB 3.0, mainly because it's super thick cables and it doesn't bend very well. So this is going to be installed on the bottom of the motherboard.
How often do you recommend dusting the internals of a computer?
It depends on the area that you're in. If you have a lot of high dust in your area or like pets, then dusting about once a month or once every 3 months is more ideal. And then it also depends like if somebody does unfortunately smoke in your house or if you're just near a dusty area. Cleaning it more often is always going to be better than not cleaning it at all, because I've had a lot of computers come in where they just never clean the thing. Also, if it has tempered glass on it, remove the plastic on it. Keeping it on there does not keep it clean. It just allows more things to kind of get trapped in there.
Aesthetic cases, yes. So he just plugged in that big, it was a 10 pin,
20 pin?
20 pin, and that was on the bottom of this motherboard. So that's why he went through that big hole in the bottom. He's just looking for the best places on the case to get through to where he needs to plug them in without showing as much of the wires or the cords. Just to make a cleaner aesthetic for when he's got his wiring done. What do you respect more, clean cable management or a clean car engine?
Nobody looks at your car engine.
Or a clean browser history?
Well, you shouldn't be showing that off anyways. Definitely cable management. I actually had a guy that was, he wanted me to send him business, and I asked him for a picture of his computer builds. And he had the most terrible cable management. I was like, I'm not sending anybody to you. You did not pass the test.
Should show them where you're plugging those in.
I am, but I'm trying to get it, see if I can get it underneath here, but I can't easily, so...
Oh, do you recommend thickest to thinnest cables in that order? I mean, if you're super OCD.
What do you mean thickest to thinnest? Like which ones to plug in first? It's generally going to be which ones you're trying to manage the best. So like doing the USB 3 first, it's because it's super annoying to deal with. So this other cable that I'm working with is the HD audio cable, and that one is it's definitely smaller than the USB 3. I'm trying to...
Oh, shit.
I'm swearing.
I didn't. I said shizzle. Shizzle. Fans, I think, are the hardest for me personally when doing cable management. Is all the fans, especially like I just had a big case and I don't know what the case was. I had a Leon Lee.
You have a Leon Lee 011 Dynamic XL.
Yes, very, very large case, many fans, many wires. It does, though, have a lot of good channels, but it's just confusing. All the fan wires look the same. There's 2 on every fan, and then hooking them up to the... Tycho says, go by what's more important then for cable management.
So like with cable management, I mean, that's going to be definitely starting out with something that's not a lot of RGB on it would be the better way to learn for cable management. But if you're going like head in deep when going with like Corsair fans, which have like probably the most wires that you have to deal with, then you're going to have, a long process of trying to make that look good. So it really just depends on what you're going for. You don't have to go with RGB, it just depends on the look that you kind of want.
So this, for plugging those in, can you turn the case? We'll just turn it so they can see from the top view. I do my cable management different. I'm not as awesome as Devin yet,
with that?
but I like to get everything into the into the case before I start plugging everything in.
So we're going to try and zoom in with one of the cameras so you can get a better look, because it is hard to do. I mean, we're just doing this with webcams because we're not like super baller when it comes to video production. We're not like the other YouTubers and the Twitch streamers that do this for a living.
I don't know that I know how to do that.
No need then.
I mean,
okay.
Yeah,
So we're going to be installing for the front panel connectors, which are super hard to see. So they're going to be right next to the USB 3.0.
Here, we see. Here, I'll try to be super fancy here and get up in there. Get your light. Well, that's a pretty good view. If I can have a steady hand.
So it's going to be, the front panel is going to be this connector, right? Yeah. So I'm going to unplug the USB 3.0 for right now. So you'll see on the front panel, there's going to be label. Can you see it? Okay, kind of.
Yeah,
so there's labeling right here. There's going to be power LED on the top left, and then hard drive LED on the bottom left, and then the power switch and reset. So the way that these work is... But I like to install usually the hard drive LED first, And then you're going to do power LED. So the top very left is going to be your positive, and then you're going to have your negative.
Please don't break. What does that mean?
And then you're going to have your power switch. A lot of computers don't have a restart switch anymore because you don't really need it. And also, it's not good to force restart computers. So now those are plugged in, we're going to plug in the USB 3.0 again. Watch out when you're removing the USB 3.0 because sometimes you can rip the socket out and that's not a fun time. Okay. So now those are installed, and we're going to be able to tighten up the cables of where they're coming from to make sure that it has a good look and functionality of it.
Oh yeah, I'm so opposite. I totally would have had the graphics card in by now.
Yeah, you don't want to install the graphics card too fast because you'll run out of space, or it'll make it really hard to plug things in. So that's why I don't really like doing that. Can I get a big zip tie?
Modular power supply with more juice than your rig needs, or standard power supply that has extra cables.
Modular. Always go full modular. They do cost a lot more, and a lot of times you're going to get either 80 plus bronze or gold, platinum, that kind of thing. Those are going to be much better than going with like a 600. This is a 600 watt. I think it's a 80 plus white. So 80 plus white is more definitely budget friendly. It is not modular. It has ketchup and mustard cables on it, which are not attractive in any way. So it's a lot of times better to go with like straight black power supply cables. Generally full modular stuff is going to have that. Or you can go with like colored cables or colored extensions. And that's going to go with more of like cosmetic choices to it than full functionality.
This guy says, how long does the battery on the motherboard typically last?
The battery on the motherboard is pretty much just for saving the time and saving your configuration. So generally about 8 to 10 years is how long it lasts, because it generally always pulls power from your power supply when it's plugged in to store that information. And some motherboards don't even. This one has it, but I've seen some motherboards don't even have a battery anymore. So, it kind of just depends on how the memory is stored for the BIOS.
I didn't know that. I learned something today too.
Can I get a small one, I guess? Was it because you were already holding it?
No, I wasn't. Just got a good eye for this. I'll share our GoFundMe link again.
Sometimes you can also be OCD about how you do your zip ties. So the way I did this one is it's not going to actually, it's going to be more of a nub instead of if I pull it in from the other way, it can be more flat against the metal.
Oh my.
So it really just depends.
Getting real particular.
I mean, it just depends on what you're doing and how tight your space is. Like,
some cases too have those pieces to put on to cover the wiring. I found this out with the build I did the other day, and I already did the wiring, and then how I did the wiring affected being able to put on that back plate, but it didn't matter because my wiring was beautiful. So, what's the worst cut on your ever got from building a computer?
the worst cut? Like cutting myself? Oh my god. I had a what was it?
Is it easy to cut yourself? Yeah, those the
Oh dude,
deep
metal
pool.
tears you up.
Oh, it's gross too. It's like the fish gill cut on the deep
Oh
pool.
no, it wasn't the deep pool. It was the Be Quiet Dark Rock 4
yeah.
Pro. I was trying to put inside of a Inwin A1 version 2. I think it was version 2. But yeah, it just wouldn't fit.
There's a mini
and
ATX case too.
Mini ITX. Yeah.
ITX, yeah.
So just picking up the cooler and it just sliced my fingers like constantly, fish gilled all the time. And I was like, blood. See, when I put blood into a computer, it's because I care.
Yeah, back panels will definitely get you too. I actually just ripped my shirt today on one of them.
A couple of them. What's yours, man? 10?
10?
Just 10.
Oh, viewers. I thought you were asking for 10.
Oh, no.
I was like, what? Intense.
All right, so let's go super OCD with this zip tie. So if I put it in this way, it's going to come out like this one, which is not how I want it. So if I go in the other way, which requires some modification of the zip tie, bending it, really, and then when I seal the zip tie, now the zip tie is going to be more flush with the case, which makes it look a little bit better.
Somebody clip that face.
It makes it better. That's why. But if you're building your computer however you want to build it, then you can build it however you want.
Stitch goes, Devin's blood and sweat literally goes into making builds. No tears. He ain't no snowflake. That's a Devin thing.
I don't even know. Always cut off the ends of your zip ties too. It's tilty. So right now, one of the things you'll probably notice is that I'm setting aside the fan wiring so that I can do that all at the same time instead of trying to bundle it in with my main run. The main reason for that is it might not go to the same place, and so I don't want to, limit my chances with it. And then this other wire that I have, this one here, this is for the Silverstone, most likely the bottom plate here, which lights up the Silverstone name. So
fancy.
Unless I can figure out how to do that, then I would change it, but I'm not that fancy yet. We'll see after we get out of this quarantine. What? Any questions?
Said zip tie direction matters. Interesting or crazy. It doesn't really. I mean, it makes things easier or more aesthetically pleasing.
It's more aesthetically pleasing.
Yes. And that matters for the people who are getting into the back of your case, but if you really don't care, it doesn't matter. Makes things easier when you have to, like I said, repair or fix something or change something. But yes, please. Oh, if you ever have to get a repair done, please just zip tie random things in the case before giving it to Devin. That would just make my day.
Oh, I do post. If you want to see them, you just go on our Instagram, PC Gamers Hawaii with a Z, and you'll be able to see where I roast people constantly. I don't tag them at all, unless I know them and they're like bad, or like Concrete Block maybe. I'll tag him.
What's the story there on the Concrete Block?
Oh
name?
No,
that's
he
a not
was a
stream
worker.
thing.
He was
okay.
What happened?
Can't wait to hear this one.
Had to do with picking up an order though.
Oh. Oh no.
Is he still watching?
You said I'm not C Block, by the way. Oh.
Well, then why do you say C
Who
Block?
are you? Who is
Oh no,
this?
Omni. That's
Oh, what's it?
he works in Frisco. He helped me with the network stuff. I took his job.
Cool.
Did I take his job? But he worked at the convention center, so I kind of did like what he did.
Number one fan, Professor Layton, joining us.
What, he finally got away from Animal Crossing?
No, he's just multitasking.
Yeah.
How's that going, Layton? How's your gaming? I hear a lot of special things about Animal Crossing lately. Beautiful, Devin. It's gorgeous.
See?
If you're a fan of Devin's gorgeous wire management, go ahead and give us a like or hit up our GoFundMe that I linked in the chat there.
Alright, so now we can put in the power supply, which our power supply is ketchup and mustard, because we just, we're getting new power supplies in next week, so if you do need power supply or whatever, then we're getting new parts in next week as well.
So it's ugly, but I like that it's already there.
Always remove plastic.
Everything's attached and ready to go.
You can also remove the stickers from the power supply If you're depending on how your build is, or you just don't want to show off your power supply, then you can remove these stickers as well.
Remove them and put a PCG's magnet right there.
Probably don't.
Does it matter which way the fan on the power supply faces up or down? Well,
yes, it can. So, like if your computer is going to be put on the floor, I would probably face it up. With a non-modular, I wouldn't, because they're ugly. So, because if you do it where it's facing up, you're going to have all the cables coming out of the front of the case. So it'll be like if you have a window, then you'll see all of the cables like in a terrible spot. Generally, it's ideal to have the fan facing down because you're going to pull in air from the bottom of the case to cool the power supply only, and not use any of the case air, so that you're going to keep that air kind of for the graphics card, whatever it might be. But it just depends on like how you're doing your cooling. So if you're doing like water cooling, then you can do it up, and it also depends on the power supply that you have. We're going to be doing it down, so it's going to pull air from the bottom, and if the power supply fan does turn on, which a lot of them don't anymore, then it'll be able to cool better for that way.
Why don't they turn on?
Because they're much more efficient now. That's what the 80 plus rating is they're going to have a better efficiency on how they handle the power, and they don't generally need to turn on the fans unless it gets really hot. So that's where you're going to get better performance out of it.
Do you recommend plugging the computer into a power, or plugging straight into the wall is okay too?
Plugging straight into the wall, we do not suggest in any way. Generally, you want to go into a surge protector that has the joule rating based off the power supply that you're using. The most optimal thing that you can plug it into is a battery backup, which will have a line conditioner in it. Especially if you're in Hawaii, the power in Hawaii is terrible. Plugging it into a battery backup will condition the line, so if there's brownouts or lightning storms, or just a normal transformer blows up in your neighborhood, like the last 6 weeks, or like this year we've had like 6 of them blow up, then you're not going to damage your motherboard or components in your computer. So that's more ideal. And you can go to Costco, and I think they have really good ones for about $100, or you can go to Best Buy and get the same one for about $200. So kind of depends on what you want to do. Amazon unfortunately won't ship them because it has a battery inside of it.
I tried that with my laptop. I tried to get a new battery and I couldn't.
Yeah, I just ordered one on eBay for a Soonfa.
So frustrating.
It is. Even the company, like MSI, was like, no, you can send us the laptop. And I was like, I don't want to do that. So right now I'm routing kind of like bulks, individual cables through, or sets of cables through, just so it's easier to feed them through to the backside of the case, because then we can manage them better, even though we're not going to be using all of them. But that's the downfall of a non-modular power supply.
Oh, also, for those of you watching, I'm not sure if you know, since we're closed to gaming, we haven't been having our regular League of Legends randoms in the store. So this week what we're doing is we're hosting our first online randoms for anyone that's on the North American server. I think there's still time to sign up. If you want the link, I'll link it. But it's going to be super exciting. We've got like 35 people signed up so far. 40 something now. But definitely wanted to get into that. It's a $10 buy-in. 5 to the pot, 5 to the store. But that's going to be a blast.
So I kind of messed myself up on the doing some of the the USB and the audio stuff first, because when I put in the power supply, it kept hitting the wires. So now I had
done it my way. He wouldn't have messed it up.
Now I had to unplug it and then plug it back in. So
he said, "What's the difference between a modular and a non-modular power supply?"
So a non-modular is going to be the one that we're using right now, which has all like the big tail of cables coming out of it, and then a modular
just has where you can plug in whatever wires you need, so you don't have to plug in all of them.
So a modular is going to have all of the plugs where you plug in what you need. So if you're only using your 24-pin ATX, which plugs into the main power for the motherboard. Your CPU power, which is an 8-pin. Your graphics card only has one 8-pin or 6-pin power. Then you're only using those. And if you're not running any additional like hard drives or extra power sources, or power things, then you don't need to plug in anything else. So you're only plugging in maybe like 4 or 5 cables instead of having 6 plus or more of just extra cables. So it's just cleaner look, and that's more ideal.
I posted the link to our online randoms tonight. If you guys want to join, that's going to be going up in like an hour. It'll be on Discord, so they'll open up the Discord servers, and then everyone who's already paid that will be putting their Discord with their team, and it'll go from there. But that's going to be super fun, so I definitely recommend you sign up for that. George, is this a joke? Or am I actually supposed to answer this? He said, Paige, why aren't cats allowed to work near computers? I feel a dad joke coming.
No, you can have cats near a computer. I mean, Gamers Nexus has his cat, Snowball, or whatever his name is.
Okay, well, I've got 8 cats and a lot of computers, and they're fine. So,
yeah, I mean...
I think it's a joke. I think because they like to chase the mouse around. So funny, George. So funny.
Don't you have sleeping to be done?
Deeves. I have a lot of your cats work. They on salary. Deeves. Okay, I have a lot of radiators in my rig. In your experience, is there a difference in cooling with a push or pull setup, or using a push and pull config as an option?
That depends on the types of fans that you're using, but if you can do push and pull, so you have fans on both sides, that's better. But otherwise, like, pull, it depends on the look that you're going for, like if you have RGB fans. But usually pushing into the radiator is better than just pulling, because you're going to get less resistance on your air. So you get better cooling, technically.
I usually just go by what the manual says, because the manuals will usually say, for optimal performance, place the fans this way or that way.
Yeah, but if you're doing a custom cooling solution where you have if you're going like Noctua fans, or you're doing like EKWB fans or something like that, they're going to have, of course, different performances on it. So.
Yeah. Fascinating. Entered randoms. Going to be a weekly tournament. If it goes well, this week, then we definitely love to do more online, especially while we're closed here because of the COVID. And then if it goes really well, we could even do other games instead of, just League. We could maybe get some CSGO or... it does look terrible, Devin. What should we do?
It's because
Can you go under?
No, I can't.
So show them how terrible it is.
So, this case is awesome, and, just... You can't get it underneath the 3.0 connector, so now it just kind of looks bad. I'll try. This is where I spend a lot of time, just because I get anal about it. I want to make sure that it looks good, and then I'll sometimes make myself bleed from it.
I think that looks better.
No, short.
Yeah, that case doesn't have any other options because it's so short. I mean, a lot of the cases will have. There's more options directly underneath the motherboard, between the motherboard and the power supply. There's some
slightly better
channeling options.
Slightly better. I don't know if you can see it, but it's not as annoying now. All right, so now we got to start plugging stuff in. All right, so we got our main 24-pin power. Almost every motherboard that you're going to deal with always needs all 24 pins. I don't know why they separate these still, but apparently there's some standard that they're going off of. It's probably some A+ thing. And so we're going to feed it through up top here. And
come over this way more because your up top camera's not getting anything.
all right.
Much better.
Take a break. How am I going to do this?
You're doing good. You're doing good. Keep going.
I'll let you take
Keep
over
at
for a
it.
little bit. All right. So we want to make sure that so that's got a clip on it. We're going to be.
Pull this and go for the other view. Just try that.
Okay.
So like they can see what.
Okay, so we're going to be installing the 24 pin. Make sure it's all lined up properly. Into.
This is where having cute tiny fingers is helpful.
So there we go. Now we got our ketchup and mustard plugged in. And
Beautiful.
Then we're going... So this is where, like, if you do have a ketchup and mustard power supply, getting, like, cable extensions similar to...
Guys, I'm super impressed with how steady I'm holding this. Yeah.
So you can get, like, a cable extension pack similar to, like, this. It'll come usually with the ATX 24-pin, like the CPU and PCIe, VGA stuff, for like $40, and it'll make your cables look so much better. The problem is that you're going to have a bunch of cables stuck somewhere else, and with this case, there's really no place to hide it. So,
Just not going to be possible.
so it's unfortunate. Alright, so we got that plugged in. Then we're going to do the CPU 8-pin. You know it's a better motherboard if it does have 8-pin power for your CPU instead of like 4-pin. A lot of pre-built computers will only use 4-pin. That means that they're using a low-end motherboard and it has bad power delivery. If it does have an 8-pin plus a 4-pin, then it's going to be better, or 2 8-pins, it's going to be really good. But that's usually like $500 motherboards. Any other questions?
When I shop for a motherboard, will the specifications say how many pins for power there are?
They'll have pictures. It's like Denny's. Just look at the picture and then see if it's got it, and then you'll be better.
Or like what is it, PC Part Picker? Or they have really
PC Part Picker. You can look at like their prices, and then you can always just go to the manufacturer website and see what it has
What's
feature
that
wise.
website where you can like compare? You can compare motherboards or parts.
Well, you can do that.
Is
with
that PC
like,
Part Picker?
You can do that with, as well as Amazon and Newegg.
Well, that's really helpful because it tells you how it'll tell you the differences. Like this one has this many, or this one has this many, or
Yeah.
you know.
So one of the things that I just did when I ran the CPU power is I tucked it all the way into like behind the case, so you get you can't really see it per se. And this one's long enough to do so, so you just get a more cleaner look, and you don't have to use any zip ties. So it's kind of nice. I was kind of thinking of like a QuaiCon to do like a build off of like who can use the least amount of zip ties and have it look good.
I would so in that.
And that includes twisty ties too.
I don't use twisted ties.
Alright, so what's that?
Dude, I think I missed a career calling. Got some steady hands here. Super impressed.
You'd be a surgeon.
I'd prefer not work in a hospital right now.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good idea. We should do a build off. I like QuaiCon. What are they going to name it now?
Ultra Mega Kwai Comic Con? I don't know what it's called.
Yeah, if you guys haven't heard, because QuaiCon was supposed to be in May and all of this pandemic stuff, they merged QuaiCon with Comic-Con, and they're now both going to be at one time in August? Yeah.
It's August.
It's on their Facebook page. And I think they are for people that already bought their tickets, if you just email their ticketing office, they'll transfer it over to the grouped one now. PC Surgeon Simulator, yes.
Oh, if you are looking to like start building, there is a PC simulator, like a PC repair, like computer simulator. It's pretty accurate now.
What?
Yeah. It's
Why
on
did
Steam.
you tell me this?
I thought
You just like to yell at me.
Oh,
Huh.
I don't yell at you. I just sternly look at you. There's a difference. All right, so I'm plugging in the power, the Molex power. Molex is one of the most, it's one of the oldest power connectors. It's also the most challenging sometimes because getting these pins to line up with these inserts. I'm trying to use,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Male or female.
Male. I mean, that's...
But like trying to get these to line up can always be a challenge. So sometimes like this one locked in super easy, but at other times it'll push it out, and then you have to like line it in, and get it in. So it's kind of challenging. So now I'm gonna zip tie it, and I'm gonna try and hide the wire as best as I can. Small as it is.
Oh, one-handed. Do I want to avoid bending pins?
Yes.
Yes.
Bending pins is
check
never,
out our
never a good thing.
our Facebook. There's a great picture Devin took of somebody's CPU where they.
Oh, the socket.
Yeah. I don't know what they did.
Also, never put thermal paste inside of your socket. I've had a customer do that before.
What? Like intentionally?
No, I just think he was special. I know that's on our Instagram. That's somewhere, probably last year.
Tycho, what have you been up to during quarantine? Are you allowed to leave the ship? Or he's Air Force, isn't he? I'm a jerk.
I thought he was Navy. Was he Air Force?
I'm pretty sure he's Air Force. Because he... Yeah. I don't know, they all changed their uniforms. Yeah, Air Force. Yeah, what have you been up to? Are you stuck in the barracks? Now that you can't come here and entertain us? I don't have anyone to talk to lately.
I miss talking to people. Like, having nobody
Say,
here.
you miss Tycho.
No.
Yes! I miss you, Tycho.
I hardly ever talk to Tycho.
Oh, I talked to Tycho.
He just talked at me.
Tycho's cool.
Trying to shove these Molex connectors underneath the hard drive because I'm only using it for one thing. It's kind of like when your mom asks you to clean your room and you're just like, you shove it all in the closet and you're like, okay, it's clean now.
Oh, don't do that. I go in there and check and throw everything back in the middle of the floor until she does it
Well,
right.
you can't see it, so it's all
Yeah,
good.
it looks good. Yeah, it looks good for there. It doesn't matter.
Alright, so we got that. We are going to be using one of these SATAs. So SATA power is the newer power connector, and that's going to be what's used for a lot of the hard drives. The RGB, we're going to be using this module, and because the motherboard doesn't have addressable RGB built on, so this one does use SATA power as well, which is super handy. So we're only going to be using it for the, we have a physical hard drive, which is 2 terabyte Seagate, and then we're going to be using it for the RGB power as well.
Bad idea.
So I can try and hide this in underneath the hard drive a little bit better.
Super impressed 8 of you have 9. Oh, snap. I'm super impressed that 9 of you have stuck with us through this wire management.
It's probably the best time to ask questions. It's not the most entertaining.
But it is important. It's important to... I don't know if there's a way to see whose views. It's what I live for. Good for you, man.
Or who's watching it?
Yeah, just to see, you know, if there's new... Because I know it's not 9 people chatting with us right now, but... Ooh, you ever see any geckos or dead things in people's
Last week I
builds?
had roaches in it. And I was like, cool, thanks. I'm going to charge you more money now. When I worked at Circuit City, we had a computer that came in that had a ton of meth residue. And they were just like, yeah, we're not going to work on this. It's a hazard.
Yikes. Again, there's pictures of all these when Devin finds fun things or really spectacular repairs. Or there's pictures on our Facebook. There's evidence. Some of the really, really dusty ones or really impressive wiring ones or how did you even do that ones. Is the solid-state drive only to run the OS and the spinning drive to store programs and data? When would I want to use a solid-state drive for my main storage?
So solid state is going to be used mainly for your operating system, and depending on the size is going to be for your most used programs. So if you play, like, say you get a 500 gig SSD and then you put your operating system in, and now you want to you play Call of Duty, which takes up 160 to 200 gigs. So you're filling up a lot of it with just that one game. So you would want to have your most used games on that, and any of your software that you're going to be using. Your secondary drive can be for your downloads, pictures, your documents, any games that you get on like a Steam sale that you're not going to play very often. Then you would want to put it on your secondary drive.
What if you have 2 SSDs?
Well, then you can just space out where you put stuff. And in my computer, I have a 2 terabyte main drive.
You're supposed to keep going while you talk.
No.
That's what we're doing, is we're filling the...
Oh. So, like, in my computer, I have like 4 or 5 SSDs.
Jesus.
And then I have a RAID card for it as well, so you get faster performance on some of them.
Look how clean that's looking already.
Really?
I mean,
it's better
than what, average Joe would do. No offense to anyone named Joe. Oh, Omni says, can you do a throwback build that includes 250 megabytes of RAM, 3.5 floppy drive, and 120 gigs of Hold Runs Oregon Trail at 10 FPS?
If you want to send me the parts, you could probably find it better in Bay Area.
That would be great.
Or in California than I can.
What do you think of people putting Funko Pops in their builds? Ugh. I personally cannot stand people putting stuff in their builds.
I have stuff in my build.
I know.
Why?
It looks crowded and
my case is
like
giant.
grandma's knickknacks.
Inside of my case is the entire...
I like it clean. I'm just trying to show, but...
I'm trying to think of where to put the RGB thing. So right now, I'm trying to figure out where to put this RGB.
Using either of these?
Well, yeah, I'll be using that, but it's so where to put this so that I can... It's easy to access for the customer if they want to change their color, their lighting. And then that also kind of depends on where I'm going to put the power connector in for it as well. So.
What do you mean change their lighting? Is this like they can't do it through the...
You can't do it through the motherboard because it doesn't support addressable RGB. It only supports...
That's just this particular motherboard, yeah?
Yeah, standard 4-pin RGB instead of...
that's frustrating.
No, not really, because RGB software can have a lot of vulnerabilities in it. So it's actually better to have a hardware device that controls it instead of using the software of a motherboard.
Gotcha.
Because they don't secure that software very well.
Right. What are the different types of RGB that can be used? It's from one of our viewers.
So there's going to be like Asus Aura, there's Gigabyte, MSI.
Is Asus Aura changing strictly to the...
Armory crate?
Yeah.
I think so, and I don't like it.
Okay.
I don't like the Armory crate.
Do you think the RGB trend is here to stay? Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. It's like the kids who put those sweet-looking spoilers on their Honda Civics because they're totally using those for racing and, it matters. What are you trying to do?
I'm trying to shove it in there.
Oh. That's I think that's going to be seen in the front.
It is going to be seen from the front because there's nowhere to put it in the back. Because it needs to pretty much just go like this.
So many jokes.
Family friendly.
Yes.
Alright, so I can put my... So it'll look like that.
Oh, go forward. So, we're stuck with that nasty cord right there.
It's like a ketchup and mustard shirt.
I mean, it doesn't look too bad. You can't really see it that much. And it's just one loop of it, so...
Alright, so we can put in the... I need to put in the cables for the hard drive. What time is it?
It's 5:15. Tycho, I don't think you ever answered me. What are you doing now that you're not gracing us with your amazing presence at the store? I mean, he does have the gaming laptop, so I assume you've still been doing all your rhythm games. You should stream, Tycho. That's, I think that would be really entertaining. You got up to what, like, oh goodness, he was in the teens. I think he got past the teens for, like, the world. Pretty impressive achievements in Osu. And was it Osu? There's a bunch of rhythm games. We've also been streaming some different games that we don't normally stream from our staff on our Facebook channel while we're closed, to try and keep you all entertained and give you something to watch. That's why we're doing something kind of different here with this build. We don't usually stream these kinds of things.
I don't like to show my secrets. I'm going to do the graphics card. Can you do the graphics card?
Yes.
And then I'm going to have Paige do the graphics card because I need to take a break. And then I'll be back.
Okay, so I'm going to put this back up here. Possibly, if I can. So, graphics card. We got a GeForce 1660 Ti. The way I like to explain this, I guess I'll sit down. I won't take his chair though, because that's sacred. The way I like to explain what a graphics card is, we've done a few events with the schools and stuff, so I've explained it a lot to the younger crowd, or a more basic explanation is the graphics card's like the translator. So your PC and your monitor don't speak the same language, so your graphics card translates what your PC is trying to tell the monitor to display. I mean, I think that's a pretty good explanation, right? Pretty good, simple, kid-friendly. See, this is why I don't like to do the wires first, because then I like to lay this back down to put all this stuff in. It's not bad either way to do that first, but like he just ran into the issue with having to change how he had it because he had already put the wires up. I run into that a lot too, because I don't plug everything in to the motherboard before I have all the pieces together. So I run into the issue. Oh, this thumb screw is pretty tight. I run into the issue where at the end I'm left with all my wires all over the place on the back of my cases. So it's hard to figure out what's what and go where, but then I think it's easier for me to group everything at the end and keep it in the same channels, because I feel like if I would have done it the way Devin did, I'd be cutting a lot of the zip ties. Let's see, this is gonna just go in the first and second, right? Always check which ones you need to take out first, because the case has these little claws that I can't get out. That's interesting. It's like so the case has never done this before, bear with me, where the graphics card's gonna go through and I have to take out the first and the second. The first came off really easy, but the second is like, oh, I think it's almost like if I'm breaking something, you guys get to see the wrath of Devin. It's like a permanent thing. A lot of them kind of slide in and screw on, but this one does not. Okay. Now we can pop our graphics card in. It has the same kind of tab that the RAM has. So when it slides in, it does the same little, very satisfying pop close. Oh, I don't think you could hear it. That's okay. So I'll turn around to show what I meant by taking the second grill off. And then they have a screw there. definitely don't forget to screw it in. We had a customer come in with a really, really big graphics card, and he didn't screw it down, so it was really forcing itself on the case. Also grounding. Another build we had come in, it had been, I guess, tightened too far, so that when he was plugging his HDMI in, the metal was touching and it was grounding out, and that's why it wasn't working. Since the GPU plugs into the Mobo, is there only one cable running off of it to power? That's a definite question. Well, I don't know what he wants me to do now. It didn't take that long as he wanted to take his break. But I just got the graphics card in, so it's gonna hook up right here to wherever that is. LOL. Call me. I want to say it, but I don't want to mispronounce the name. Can you give me... what do you call that when you're, the pronunciation? Can you write the pronunciation out for me? Call me Alcohi. Yeah. Hi, like hello. It's in. You can finish plugging it in explanations. Yeah, I'm talking to you. I'm rambling on awkwardly.
You're rambling.
Yep. I'm like, oh, plug this in, and okay, I did that. Now, I don't want to mess with your cable management. I guess we could put another screw in that second one, but it wouldn't really matter. And he said, since the GPU plugs into the motherboard, is there only one cable running off of it for power?
So this one here only uses a single 8-pin power connector. So that's going to be has a daisy chain if you add a separate one. So we're going to be using the single 8-pin, and then we're going to be zip tying it back.
So that second one, is that for the bigger graphics cards like Solos? I think his uses more, or
yeah. So like other power supplies or other graphics cards can have either 2 8-pins, which this will support, or an 8-pin and a 6-pin, and so that's where you can use just one cable. But if your power supply has 2 PCIe power cables, it's actually better power delivery to use 2 separate cables instead of daisy chaining. So you'll get better power delivery from that. Some power supplies will give you Velcro as well to use, and you can generally use that. Like some of the EVGA stuff will have branded, so if you're trying to like show off the brand that you're using. EVGA is one of our sponsors for KawaiiCon last year, and we're hoping for the next KawaiiCon that we'll be able to get them as well. And so we really like using EVGA stuff. So one of the things that I'll do here is I like to use the power supply cable to... Some of the graphics cards can be quite heavy, and so they'll start to droop a little bit. So I'll use actually the power cable to kind of stop the drooping, and that's where tying it off back here with the power supply cable, the ATX 24-pin. Can you get it big sometime? Yeah.
Komiko, he had a good question. He said, when daisy chaining, does he have to have something plugged into the first socket before using the one on the end?
I don't think so technically, but I generally use the first one instead of the second. So it probably user preference. Like, well, if you're not daisy chaining, yeah. So if you're not daisy chaining, then I generally just use the first one instead of the daisy. No, another big one. So one of the things that I do also offer when building a computer for a customer is if they want to watch me do it, kind of like what we're doing here, then I do offer that additional service as well. It does cost an additional labor fee, mainly because it can take a lot longer to build a computer. So right now we're working on about 2 hours to build this computer, whereas it would normally take probably about 45 minutes to an hour. So because it does take longer and because of the questions that they might ask, it kind of slows the process down. It's also like if you're a mechanic, you generally don't like it when the customer is watching you and asking you all these questions. So it's kind of an extra fee for that.
He did go and do this in Maui couple weeks ago. He went over and built a PC for one of the teachers at what school was it?
Paia Elementary was a Hawaiian immersion school. So it was really cool because they spoke only Hawaiian language at the school for the majority of everything that they were doing. So it was really cool. They sung a Hawaiian song, and they were teaching us different words in the Hawaiian language as well. Okay, so now we're going to be doing the fan header. So this is going to be for the fans that we're going to be using, the 3 fans. That's going to plug into a single port on the motherboard. And then this does have PWM support, which allows it to control the fan speeds. That's what the 4th pin is for. You're going to have a sensor wire, and then you're also going to have a way to control it, control how much voltage it gets. So we're going to be plugging that in.
There's multiple options for where to plug this in on most motherboards, yeah?
Yeah, usually, like mini ATX is only going to have like 3 fan headers total. Micro ATX will probably have 3 to 4. Full ATX can have a lot more. And depending on the...
I'll bring this back down to show your side.
So I'm plugging in the fan right below the ATX 24 pin. And so that's kind of hiding where it's going to be plugged in at. And then it allows me to route it where I want it to go. And so we have to be conscious of like where our shortest fans are going to be. So placing it up here is probably going to be the best choice because of where everything else will be.
This is something that really confused me when starting to learn to build is plugging the fans in. Just with all the daisy chaining involved and it just can get to be confusing. Is there any tips that you would offer people that are just starting and have maybe more fans than headers on the motherboard that have to use these?
Well, definitely having a fan hub is going to help with that. Sometimes your fan pack will come with it. Otherwise, using an external one, you can buy them for about 15 to 20 bucks. Will give you more fan headers to use, and those will either be straight power or they will be able to control the fan speed. Get in there.
I think another thing that I personally didn't know was some of the fan only had 3 pin, or you can plug a 3 pin into a 4 pin.
Yeah, so those will have those are going to have either no PWM support, so you're not going to be able to control the settings as much. So it'll be kind of just straight power. So it'll have a sensor wire, and then it'll just have the power. So the sensor is just going to tell the motherboard how fast it's spinning, and it's not going to be able to control really anything else. Okay, so now it's about cleaning up these wires and figuring out what we're going to do with them. There we go.
But for the most part, you have everything else plugged in already, yeah?
Yeah,
Just
so the only
strictly the
thing we
fans.
really need to do now is going to be the RGB. this is where it's just a little more tedious.
Is it beneficial to not group your fan wiring with the rest of your wiring?
Well, if you want to keep it separated so you know what it is, so if you have a problem, then it's better to leave it separate. Can I get a small zip tie?
Do you have a preference in the types of fans that you use? I know you used a lot of the same kind.
I like to use deep cool fans, especially when doing RGB, because they don't require specific software like Corsair, NZXT. I'm just really not a big fan of Corsair fans, mainly just because they have a lot more wires to them, and then you have to use their software for them, and they have so many different types of fans, so the colors are not going to always look the same. So now we're going to do this and that. What?
Nothing. Just interesting that you talk to yourself as much as you do. Just trying to figure out where on the case this piece might fit to be prettiest. I mean, you could put it anywhere, but Devin's pretty particular. Oh, I think that's good if it all fits. Does Deep Cool always have the stickers? I know some of them have magnetic.
Yeah, some of them are magnetic. Usually these ones are. I'm kind of surprised that they're not. Maybe they've gotten cheap.
Oh. Yeah, I definitely prefer the magnetic because since I do all my wiring at the end, I end up moving it around several times before finding a good final position. So he just tucked the wire from up top back behind that power cable and into that channel on the edge, so he doesn't even have to zip tie it there. It just kind of all holds it in place. What's considered too many fans in a build?
Nothing. I mean, in the Leon Leak 011 dynamic case, you can have I think you can have 9, but theoretically, if you had a push-pull setup for your radiators, you could do 12 or 15. So I don't see it as an issue. I mean, the only time it might be an issue is noise, if that is of concern, or cost would be a concern as well, because fans can be pretty expensive. So I don't. And I think in my computer I have a push-pull setup, so I think I have 9 fans in my computer, which is a Fantex Evolve X.
Bum, bum, bum. So that's everything plugged in now, yeah?
Yeah, I just need to put in this small zip ties, please. A couple of them.
Okay. Does look very clean still. Not a lot of wires going around. It'd be super easy to adjust or repair or fix or change anything out if you needed to. Last one.
There's 3 working here.
Gonna do a final reveal when you turn it on.
Yeah, I'm going to turn it on, make sure it works. What is starts? We gotta get ready for the randoms today.
Yeah. George said when it starts sounding like a vacuum cleaner. Yep, definitely. Most of the fans are super quiet nowadays, though. Like, I don't even hear my PC when it's running. How many fans do you have in your computer, George? Your VR build. Will this run Crisis? Is that what this says?
Everything runs Crisis, and it depends on which Crisis you want. Crisis 1 was definitely more demanding. All the other ones sucked because they made them for consoles. So I think any potato now can run Crisis. It just depends on how well it will run it. But this will run it just fine because Crisis I think came out in like early 2000s. So.
Would this be able to run VR?
Yeah, you can run VR with this. I mean, you can run VR with laptops, so this will be better than the laptop.
Not well. What VR though? I mean,
it depends on what you're asking. If it'll run it, anything will run. It just depends on how good you want it to look. Yeah, I'll go semantics on it.
Alright, it's beautiful. You can fix it later. Let's turn it on. The people want to see. Right, people? You want to see? You want to see us turn it on? Tell Devin he can fix his wires later. Say yes.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Beautiful. Looks wonderful, Devin.
It's better than iWiFi.
Plug it in. Plug it in.
Okay. Oh, I still about the power supply.
Oh shoot! Sorry.
What is this?
Sorry.
Where's the
I was.
thing at?
The screw
The only
goes
screw-
right
what?
in it. That's the only screw that was there.
That was the
Screw's
screw that
smaller
came out
than
of this, right?
Oh, the thumb screw, yeah. It's over on the left side. Sorry, I got nervous. Started blabbing.
What's the thumb screw?
Oh, right here.
You didn't. You didn't even finish mounting it.
Let's see.
So one of the things to watch out for when you're mounting your graphics card
Exactly what I said when I was doing it.
is
Didn't do
that
it.
if it's too high up, it will
Ground, yeah.
it'll ground when you plug in your connectors to it. So you want to make sure that it's tilted the right way. And so I actually had to fix somebody's iBuyPower that was doing that. Just by fixing the tilt, it was able to boot properly and didn't have crashing issues. What?
George, if it doesn't turn on this page. You didn't even screw in the power supply.
I know, I didn't.
Looks really good though. Really clean.
If you're interested in purchasing this computer, it is for sale. I think it's around $1,400 or so, and we do include a 2-year parts warranty on all of our builds, and we also provide lifetime of the computer tech support, which is generally about 8 years.
Alrighty. Do most RGBs come on the same setting for whatever colors they're on?
Like their default setting?
Yeah.
What is that?
A little tool case.
Just. I think some of them will be. I don't know. No.
Does it matter for video quality? Oh, yay! If it's HDMI or DisplayPort.
DisplayPort's better.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even know that. Why?
DisplayPort is a newer technology. It also handles higher bandwidth. That's why you would want to use it for 4K or 144 hertz or 240 hertz. You have to use, like, HDMI 2.0 can do up to 120 to 144 hertz, I think, whereas DisplayPort is for 240 hertz. So now with this hardware thing, we can control the lights for these fans here.
Do you always leave it poking out the front like that?
I usually put it in different places, but it depends on what it's doing. So now you see that it's booting. We have BIOS, which means that we can now configure the system, which usually involves updating the BIOS to the latest version, setting the RAM speeds and the hard drive settings so that we can install Windows on it. And then we're going to be installing Windows 10 Pro onto this, and then it'll be ready for a customer to pick it up when they're ready. Cool.
Right on.
Thank you guys for watching. And you guys have any last minute questions at all? Which one is George?
The red one. G. Sanqui. George Sanqui. 88.
Oh, this one?
The red one, yeah.
Oh, that was, he was asking about the Verge stuff.
Oh, was that George?
Yeah.
All right, well, don't forget, we've got League of Legends randoms tonight online. So I posted the link in chat. I'll post it one more time for those of you that might have missed it. We are having our first online randoms tonight. It's going to be awesome.
Cool. Glad that we were able to teach you how to build the computer. If you have questions, you can always reach us on our social media, PC Gamers Hawaii for our Facebook page, Instagram, and you can always ask questions as well. You get a couple of them for free.
All right, that's it. We're ready for randoms. Thanks,
All right, cool.
everybody.
Thank you, guys. You should probably export that VOD to YouTube as well.
Yeah.